morning, and thank you for that. If there's one thing we've learned this morning, you'll do whatever we say from the podium. So, thank you all for coming again this morning. I'm excited to jump right into this year's discussion. But before I do just want to highlight a couple things within the magazine that we talked about earlier. Senior staff writer Kent Darr and our whole team really worked hard to bring you that project. And trust me when I say it's packed with great stuff. To put together the editorial content for the magazine, we hosted a series of roundtables, 5 of them, all from different industries. In addition to the work Kent did, the magazine also contains trends to watch from local experts, Hubbell's market facts, broker profiles, and a list of the 10 largest deals in each of those 5 industries. And here's the thing, no matter how good the discussion is today, and no matter how good our panelists are, trust me when I say by the end of the panel, we're only going to have scratched the surface of some of the topics. I know you're going to want more, and we have more of that. We've got a brand new website that goes along as a kind of a companion website with the magazine. You can go to businessrecordarem.com to check that out. But we've got videos of those 5 roundtables in full. We have some clips from the videos as well, so I'd highly encourage you to check that out. And after watching all those roundtables, what you're going to see is that while a number of themes and trends emerged that Kent tries to capture in that magazine, I think there were really 2 main trends that emerged across all 5 of those roundtables. One, generational changes are creating some dramatic shifts in behaviors and desires of consumers and workers. And 2, new technologies and innovations are accelerating those shifts. My goal with the panel that we've assembled today is to explore both of those themes a bit deeper and attempt to gain a better understanding of what some of those shifts might mean for you and your business, and of course for the region. And we've got a great panel today that's well-versed to be able to help us with that. Directly to my right is Jake Christensen. He's the president of Christensen Development. Jake founded Christensen Development in 2003 with a passion for urban development. And with more than 20 years of experience, he has made it his company's mission to transform not just individual sites, but entire areas. He was a 2018 CRE Pro of the Year, has a finger on the pulse of both retail and housing, and has been instrumental in East Village and downtown Renaissance. Directly to Jake's right is Niki DePhillips. She's the Senior Vice President of Store Development at Come & Go. Niki's primary focus is to oversee all activities related to site selection, government proposals, and construction of their 20 to 30 new convenience stores annually. Additionally, she leads the company's sustainability function and the design and construction of all of the real estate developments, including the Krause Gateway Center. I heard Niki give a detailed presentation at Rotary about the work that went into the interior of that office, and trust me, we could have just given her the full hour today to talk about what all went into that. Next, we have Adam Kaduce. He's a Senior Vice President at R&R Realty Group. Adam began as an intern at R&R Realty while attending Drake University, and he's quickly risen through the ranks. And since that time, he's grown to become R&R's top producer, an award he took home in both 2017 and 2018. He's a 2014 40 Under 40 honoree and clearly has his finger on the pulse of the office and market and trends affecting the industry. Directly to Adam's right is Laura Rowley. She's the president of Rough Meadow Digital Media. Laura Rough Meadow Digital Media is a communications and marketing firm that helps businesses tell clear and compelling stories to their stakeholders. The firm specializes in financing and real estate clients, including CBRE, Hines Development, and others. Laura is an award-winning journalist, so trust me, if I run out of questions, she's going to jump in, I promise. And she spent a considerable amount of time in New York City, and is going to be able to provide us some of those macro trends that she's seen across the country. In addition, she's also writing a book about Des Moines and trying to understand what the kind of secret sauce is here. After many interviews, I think she's calling it the frictionless city. Is that what we're going with at the moment?
That works for now.
All right, so she'll talk a little bit about that, I think, today too. And lastly, we have Kris Saddoris. She's the Vice President of Multifamily Development for Hubbell Realty Company. Kris works with developments ranging from urban neighborhood development, multifamily rental, and affordable housing, to retail, industrial sites, and single-purpose uses. So all the questions that nobody knows how to answer, we're going to direct down your way. She has been instrumental in the creation of more than 80 multifamily communities across Iowa in her career. And before joining Hubbell, was employed for many years with a leading developer of affordable housing in the state of Iowa. In addition, she's been heavily involved in creating and developing the plans for Hubbell's new urban neighborhood Grays Station. All right, reminder, this is going to be a Q&A with you in the audience after an initial question or two from me. We're going to open it up. I always tell people there's one way to make sure you get your question answered. It has to be the first brave soul to put your hand up, so I don't want anybody to be shy. So have your question ready to go. We also have a couple roving mics. It's a big room. We're going to try to get the mic out to you so that way we can make sure everybody hears the question. Okay, our first question, panel. Jake, I'm going to have you start. What is one real estate trend you're watching in 2019?
Are we working? How about now? All right. I think one of the trends I'm watching is we've been 9 years or so into a recovery.
Hold on 1 second for me. Any luck? Sorry, Jake, you're not allowed to talk today.
All right.
Let's do this. Let's pause you for a second. We'll go down the line to Niki, and we'll see if we can get that mic back up and working.
Is this one working?
Yeah,
You guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, you just got the bad line.
So we're tracking several trends, but one within the retail industry is just that there's a lot of disruption that's going on in retail, and there's a lot of competition for that last mile of retail, and so we're tracking a lot of different trends that are going on with that. And so you see things like delivery happening, where you can pretty much get any product delivered to your doorstep, and the future of drone delivery and so forth, and how does that impact our business as we move forward. I think you also have a lot of retailers that are testing different concepts as they try to get that last mile delivery to their customers. And so whether it's Hy-Vee with delivery lockers or their fast and fresh concept, or Amazon Go entering the retail space with their frictionless checkout lines and so forth. And so those are some of the trends that we're tracking. I would say overall, what we see from all retailers is really trying to elevate the customer experience with their store design. And so across the board, you see different materials and lighting being used and sustainable materials as retailers are trying to elevate that experience and compete in this industry that's in, frankly, a lot of disruption right now.
Adam.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. And just a shout out, if you like the cover of your magazine, we do still have space available. That's my only shameless pitch today. The trend that we're really watching right now, and it's what we hear from our customers and what we're experiencing, is just a talent war right now out there. And companies are coming to us with a shift in their paradigm. They're wanting to look at how do we take our real estate costs as a fixed cost and take it more into an investment. So we're working with a lot of customers is how do we make that space a tool for them so that they can bring new recruits in, make people want to come to work every day, and make that space that really shares their values and gets people excited and engaged. So we're working with a lot of customers on that. It's just how do we develop that space that really engages people, gets them to come to work, and helps them helps them win the battle for talent right now. And we're building buildings that try to incorporate some of those amenities and assisting clients as they want to incorporate those different trends that we're seeing in the marketplace.
I'm going to piggyback on what Adam said. The largest trend I'm watching is next year, 2020, millennials will be the largest segment of the workforce. They are more diverse than any other generation in history. They are more favoring experiences over purchases, and they're keenly interested in self-expression and personal authenticity. And so all of those trends are playing out in retail, office, residential, hotel, all across the commercial real estate industry.
Kris?
Yeah, I'll piggyback right on that. You're going to hear that a lot today because real estate, we loved it because we were very cyclical, right? We always knew, we're right into the end, we're going here. And so we're looking like, where's that cycle? Well, all bets are off today because we're transforming on so many different spaces right now. We have aging. We're going to talk a lot about that today. We're losing workforce. How do we get them involved? We have increasing construction costs. We have flat rents. We have decreasing population. We want experiential real estate today. And we have technology. So we have all of these transformations impacting us at the same time. And yet we're still trying to look at this. And I think what we're going to have to understand as a real estate community is these days are over, and we have all of this going on, and how do we kind of wrap all that together in a time when we have decreasing population and a workforce shortage that's not going to go away.
All right, Jake, we're going to see if that hot. Oh, okay. Then what we're going to do, take Niki's.
All right.
And Jason, you want to bring me that one? I'll get him switched up.
Okay, try this again. That's better. I think along with some of the other panelists, there are so many variables that are affecting real estate right now. We're 9 or 10 years into a recovery, and so we should be seeing a real sign of we're due for a recession. They occur about every 9 years. But with with all of the variables that are involved, obviously it doesn't feel like it yet. Kris mentioned increasing construction costs. It's definitely affecting the ability to garner an appropriate return on real estate investment. But we do have a lot of velocity left in the market. So I think when we're, to Kris's point and to my point about the recovery, we really just have to watch very closely with what we're due in terms of economic activity and how that overlays with the generational and technological changes that are affecting all of that right now.
All right, we're going to go for a mic change here. It's going to be like the NASCAR, so here we go. So technology, that's going to be a topic today we're going to talk about, right? All right, so to follow up, one of the things that we talked a lot about in our pre-event that came up through a lot of the roundtables as well was that there was this rising of expectations, both from a generational standpoint on both ends of the spectrum, really. I wonder, maybe if Niki or Adam, you could take a first crack at it when you're taking a look at office space specifically, how you're seeing maybe some of those rising expectations have an effect on the workplace.
Okay. You went first last time. We'll give you a chance to. I think it all starts with if you've been in a school lately, if you have children in elementary or high school, or you've been to a college campus, you just see that the technology and the design is in absolutely everything. And so it shouldn't be a surprise when we see college students graduating and coming into the workforce. That's what their expectation is. Their expectation is that everything's going to work and that it's going to be designed well and look good. And so we're seeing that a lot in office design. I think it goes to agile spaces. We talk a lot about that, and just throughout your day, you're in different spaces because the tasks that you're doing every day, it depends what you're doing, what your space needs to be. And we're seeing customers that want technology that works across all those spaces. So whether you're in a Starbucks and being able to get onto your network, whether you're in your office, having multiple redundant fiber providers, having mobile technology that works throughout the office space, if it's in the collaboration space or the cafe or in your office, it's just got to work, and it's got to be ubiquitous throughout the space. And so we're seeing a lot more of that design, a lot more TVs, a lot more bigger monitors, and really just having that mobile technology to be able to work anywhere in the space and be able to get on the network and access to everything wherever you're at in your office.
To piggyback on Adam, with the Krause Gateway Center, we have lots of different generations within our building. And so one of the things that we decided to do was to go with unassigned seating. And so the freedom of this is that associates can choose, they have the choice and control to choose how they go about doing their work and what type of space best supports whatever task that they have. And as millennials are graduating and so forth and coming into the workforce, they are used to that. They're used to being able to work from a coffee shop or work from the library or go work with their friends, maybe in some type of hotel space that they have within their campus living. And so we wanted to provide a lot of different options for our associates. And so we went with unassigned seating and then provided lots of flexible space. And with that comes the support of technology. And there were some unexpected things that we had to solve for as we went through that. And so not everyone had a laptop. Not everyone had a universal laptop with the same power cords and so forth. And so we had to invest in technology to make it very easy to use throughout the building, either inside the building or outside the building, because we have a lot of outdoor spaces that we want our associates to be able to use when the weather permits and so forth. And then we also invested in several different amenities. And what we've found with our amenities, whether it's a fitness center, game room, or we have shuffleboard and beer and wine available, and a lot of the items you'd find within a convenience store, coffee, fountain, we have a barista on staff and so forth. Everyone kind of has their thing that they like to do. Maybe they play ping pong or maybe they play shuffleboard. You don't necessarily have one item that everyone is into, but it gives associates that choice and control so that they can choose the best way that they go about their work and how do they take a couple minutes of downtime and relax and connect with their fellow associates so that they're still having that human interaction, because they want the human interaction, but then they want to be able to go back and do their work in whatever manner best suits them.
Jake, you said something the other day, switching focus just a little bit to housing. You were going to have to be dragged to the old folks' home, I think was what you said, right? Can you talk a little bit about how the maybe generational changes are happening on the other end of the spectrum too from housing?
Sure. In that discussion, we were talking about how the millennials' expectations have been elevated through their experiences in college. It's very different than what we had. But I think the same thing is true for the boomers as they go into the latter parts of their life. The days of a standard rest home, I think, are going to come to an end for the people who have the option. Active lifestyles through extended periods of life, people are going to want to have options. The AARP talks about that retirees want the same thing as millennials. They want options, freedom, and choice. And I think those are going to translate into senior housing as we move forward.
Kris, I wonder what you're seeing from a housing standpoint on some of those rising expectations.
Very similar, I mean, we're seeing that kind of growth, and one of the things that I enjoy, obviously our company's done a lot of downtown housing, and it's great for all of us to sit up here, but I like getting down, I call it the ivory tower. We can't design from the ivory tower, so I like to get out and actually sit with our customers, and I got a chance to do that a couple weeks ago. We actually brought one of our downtown brand new projects together, and we just throw the invite out. Whoever comes. And uniquely, the folks that we got are very similar. So 2/3 of our downtown folks are millennials, but 1/3 of us are that's old people. That's old people that are down there. Half the people came from houses to rent with us. So not only are you seeing rent become a choice, and it's a capital choice today, they're picking location, but more and more it is seniors that are coming in, and they're choosing it for exactly the same reason that millennials, and we tend to start to kind of put labels on folks, and we need to get away from that, but they want that mobility, they want the authenticity, they want the vibrancy, and that's going to continue. But our oldest resident we have downtown right now is 76 and renting. Wow, she's not in an old people home? Shocker. So I think part of what we have to dispel is that we really need to talk about lifestyle choices as a population. We want that variety in age, we want that variety across the board, but they're all fortunately looking for the same thing. So as we create vibrant kind of connected areas, we're going to have that nice kind of range of age regardless of where we're at.
Laura, on a national scale, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about some of the trends that might be affecting from a generational standpoint.
Well, I think, agile real estate, what Niki talked about, the way they've designed the Crown Center, I think one of the biggest factors is the impact of WeWork. I mean, they started 9 years ago in a tenement in Manhattan, in a single tenement. They now have 45 million square feet of space across the world in 100 cities. They are the largest occupier in London. They're the largest occupier in New York City. So it's that rising demand for flexible short-term workspace that, designed with millennials in mind. And then from a business perspective, that sort of pay-by-the-month flexibility for occupiers. Obviously, WeWork does lose a lot of money. They lost almost $2 billion last year. But the impact it's had on leasing structures, designs, and I know we talked about this a bit, it's not so much in Des Moines, but I think it's one of those phenomenons that could sneak up the way Walmart snuck up on Main Street retail. For example, CBRE just launched a competitor to WeWork. I worked with them a little bit on their go-to-market launch, and WeWork is kind of eating the landlord's lunch because they are taking the space and creating a black box where the landlord has no relationship with those startups that could grow quickly and potentially lease other space. And they're also eating the broker's lunch because they're maintaining the relationships with the startups who start with 2 or 3 or 4 people and then might turn into a sales force, right? Which has now the downtown tower in Indianapolis. So anyway, I think agile space from a design perspective is really being driven by companies like WeWork, but it's also driving changes in the business.
And Jake, you talked a little bit and said WeWork was kicking the tires around a little bit around here.
Yeah, we've seen them, as I'm sure others have, looking at their space. I think Adam got to have a shameless plug, so I'll put in a quick plug as well. The team that is bringing the City Hall block project, WeWork looked at the mass timber building that we were doing there, and that's an example of office space trying to keep up with the expectations. I do think it's a good example of how the WeWork type of business model is affecting us here in Des Moines.
And you talked about them having kind of a very specific idea of what they were looking for in their space, correct?
Right, I think the panels touched on the expectations are for unique, flexible space, and they're driving those decisions in office design.
Adam, do you think if something like that were to start coming to market, what type of effects do you think there might be on our real estate market?
Yeah, we're already beginning to see the effects. We already have clients that come in and say, we want our space to look like WeWork. So they may not be WeWork, but they already see that space and they want to create something that's similar. I think it's a little bit of the disruption that's taking place in a lot of industries right now. It's gonna push us to get those better connections with our customer. I think we can adapt some of those things in the landlord world to make sure we're on that ground level working with our customers, so we're not losing that connection. But I think it's also going to be a provider that we're going to have to work with and look at how do we work with their customers and how do we work with them in buildings. And Regis is a provider of that. WeWork is kind of shifting that model a little bit. So it's definitely going to have an effect, and it's probably going to, I think, drive spaces to look a little bit more contemporary. Customers, if companies know they're going to be competing with them to keep employees there versus going to WeWork, I think they're going to want to drive some of those same design trends.
Great. All right, what I'd like to do now is go ahead and open up for questions from the audience. So I need my first break, Sol. Yeah, right up here in the front. Sarah's going to come over here with the mic as best she can.
Hi, my name's Ryan, and I wanted to follow up on the housing question. As we're getting millennials into the market, and they're starting to buy houses, they're starting to rent. We've got older folks that are transitioning out of their homes, and this is something that I'm on the residential side, so I've come up with some older clients. And Kris and Jake specifically, but I wondered if you could talk about if there's any plans in our market to create like an active living co-op type community. I know they've got them down in Arizona where it's centered around an activity center, pool, kind of more of that lifestyle that's not just rental, or if there's kind of anything planned.
Rick's going to feel like I planted that nice gentleman we've never met. What he's talking about is an active adult, and so again, as we transition, from those old people, they're still active, they're still working, they're still vibrant in the community, but the benefit they bring is as they turn housing and they move out of, and I can say my husband and I are empty nesters. We have 2 kids that are about to, go and be adults. And so we have a big 2-story house, and you know what? We're kind of over the snow and the blow kind of thing. So we're very active, still got a lot of work to do, and we want to stay active in the community. So what's that next step? We kind of want to, not have the outdoors to take care of, but we're still interested in living in a community that's, vibrant. Again, people, that we can communicate with, because what's interesting is we live in a cul-de-sac. In our cul-de-sac, there were 7 of us that came on at the same time with the same age kids, and 5 of the 7 have turned over. And so now the nice thing is with active adult, you still have that, but you have a community of your peers, and so you're starting to get new friends and that type of thing. So you are going to start to see that. I'll tell you, we have 2 of them that we're working on in Central Iowa now, but they're very, very prevalent across the U.S. because we're starting to see the active adult now happens in very different areas. It used to be golf course communities, not so much anymore. We're driven, more about, close to our children, close to what we love. And so you're going to see them not just happen in, the southern part, but across the U.S. in those kind of unique areas. And again, we have 2 kids coming out of college. I tell you, we're interested in being great grandparents and being close to them somewhere in the central U.S. So you're going to continue to see that, and yes, you'll see 2 in Des Moines from Hubbell. Is that good, Rick?
I think the way I would answer that question is there's 2 ways to create that kind of active lifestyle for a senior. One is to develop the entire complement of amenities along with the housing in a greenfield configuration. I think the other way that we've been working on is to integrate co-op or a senior housing product within the urban environment so that you have access to all of the urban amenities, which are almost countless, but at the same time have a peer group and a lifestyle that matches what your goals are.
Laura, you talked a little bit the other day about experiential, and we've talked about that term a little bit today, but I wonder if that might apply a little bit here to what we're talking about.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, here's my shameless plug. I'm selling my house out to Grant. And it's,
So Niki, you're gonna have to get ready for whatever.
it's 3,600 square feet, and the most shocking thing to me, I'm selling by owner just because I think it's really a fun marketing experience, is how many empty nesters have come through. We have 2 kids in college. Our youngest is thrilled about the idea of living in Gray's Landing. So, and we travel so much, especially after this winter. We're also done with snow and blow. So I think in terms of residential, it's not only all the amenities, it's the voice of the brand. So many millennials are looking toward real estate to communicate with them, to engage with the culture, to be on social. I just feel like storytelling and content as a driver of business, something the Business Record has done forever is content as a driver of business, but you're seeing individual companies turning to content, hiring chief content officers, hiring content strategists to figure out how to get their voice, how to get the culture of their company out in front of customers, because customers are hungry for that. I think part of it has to do with the iPhone. People are hungry for connection, they're hungry for community, and if a Hubbell development can speak to who they are in an authentic way, it's great for business.
More questions from the audience? Yeah, Jackie.
Before I ask my question, I'd like to just say a quick thank you to the Business Record staff and to you, Connie, specifically for supporting women in commercial real estate. We had our first honoree that is a female. We have a predominantly female panel this year. That's the first I've ever seen. And we have more women on the front of the Business Record magazine than I've ever seen before. I'm sure that's intentional. You're making a difference in our careers. So I just wanted to say thank you. And now for my question. I see lots of trends coming from other countries and other states outside of Iowa. The mass timber, I see senior living trends even coming from the Netherlands. I'm curious, what trends are you watching right now, whether that be from another country or another state, that you have your eye on that you'd like to bring to Des Moines?
Well, Jackie, I would say the neat thing that I think we forget, we've been Des Moines for so long, I'm born and raised, so we've always been flyover, like we're last, and like we're a leader now. Like how many times did Jay have to tweet that to us? We're leading the Midwest. Well, the cool thing is folks are coming here. So 2 things. A, yes, you get to celebrate for 2 seconds, and then you have to realize like everyone's behind us. So we got to keep upping our game. So the good news is people are coming here to check us out, which means we all got to keep going. And so, we take our staff on the road all the time. We pick different areas, but I think what you're seeing is that a lot of the same things are happening, that connected, vibrant kind of things that, we're trying to grow across our community. And so we go in and say, what are those kind of strategies that we're seeing in other areas? And I'm sure we'll float into the workforce question here in a minute, but, part of what I work at, the Midwest Housing CDFI, so we're trying to talk about regional opportunities, also to look at how we look at workforce housing. So I think it's not only housing and vibrancy and connected trends and technology and all these things we've been talking about, but we're screaming towards a workforce housing kind of issue. And so I think it's how do we handle those in different regions. Not only, we love to look at architecture, and my team will be feet on the ground here in another month, but we also have to look at kind of strategies and funding strategies and how they're working on those in other areas as well.
Laura, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about any trends that you've maybe seen in some of your research.
I guess the biggest trend is digital transformation and technology. Commercial real estate has always been a little bit behind other industries in terms of the adoption of technology. And so I worked with a client recently on a software product for owners and investors and asset managers that, you have problems with data, right? There's properties are giving off all of this data, but it's different platforms, it's different formats, it's different feeds, fed in different times. So software that can aggregate that data and rationalize it so that it can then go into a tool to be harnessed for better ROI on those properties. So I think the advent of really great software to take all the data that comes off of real estate and turn it into a profit driver is a big one I'm seeing.
Niki, you guys used some data when you were talking about how many people are actually in their seats, and then also the use of parking. Talk a little bit about how you've tried to do that and then incorporate it into the new building.
Sure. As we were developing the Cross Gateway Center, one of the things we did was a chair sensor study. So we put a sensor under every chair in the conference room and then each desk, and we were able to monitor the site, how our conference rooms were being used. And so we had heard a lot about people we needed more large rooms. Well, what we found was that they weren't being used properly. And so you had meetings that maybe had half the seats full in a larger room. And so some educational opportunities, we were able to take that data and then right size the number of conference rooms that we needed within the Krause Gateway Center. And we ended up with many more 2 to 4 person rooms than we had previously and shifted that mix. And then the other piece that we did is we were able to look at how often people are at their desk. And just with technology and meetings and collaboration, things have evolved. When I started at Come and Go 16 years ago, there weren't as many meetings as there are today. And so you spend a lot of time collaborating and meeting with other people in rooms outside of your desk, or maybe just standing up and having that meeting in more of our cafeteria type space and so forth. So we took that data and we found out that about 15% of our workforce is not in the office on any given day. They just don't come to the office. They're visiting stores, they're on vacation, whatever it might be. And so we were able to right size the number of desks that we needed within the space. And then also we were able to, we have underground parking, 2 levels of underground parking. And it was very popular this winter, and so we were able to over-allocate the number of associates to the underground parking because we know that there's just associates that are out of the office on any given day. So we took that data and we're able to give more people that amenity within our workspace than we would have been otherwise.
Jake, one of the things that came up the other day was pop-up retail and maybe shorter lease terms for those type of things. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about Lululemon and what that was like for you.
Sure. On the City Hall block project, we have been fortunate to have Lululemon choose to create a pop-up store within the building that West Elm is in. And so it's a trial basis for them. They were previously in the East Village, had a good experience, but then decided ultimately to go to Jordan Creek. Now they feel like the Des Moines metro market is strong enough to experiment, and so they're using that opportunity within that building to have a short-term lease and see how the activity goes for them before they make a long-term commitment.
When you brought them in, they talked a little bit about the environment that they were going to be around. Is that correct? When you were, it was actually West Elm. Oh, West Elm. Sorry. Can you tell the story about West Elm then as well? Thank you.
Yeah. So when the team was working with West Elm at the very final stages, they flew in about 9 people from the corporate real estate department, and our team was trying to figure out how do we sell them on the East Village and all the activity and great things that they would be a part of. And as they walked into the conference room, most of them had either a ray gun bag in their hand or some other clearly identifiable item from the East Village. And I really felt like we had already won when that happened. And so they quickly figured out that they wanted to be a part of the energy that was there.
You talked, I believe, also just about what they were then looking at in the environment and what they were hoping to see around that area too.
Yeah, so now I'll pick on another building. I don't think the owner's here. Their first question was, if you know where West Elm is at currently, it's on Grand Avenue, and it's a mixed-use building that the team put together. On the other side of the street is an example of a 1980s urban renewal project that now does not fit in the context of the neighborhood. It's just changed around that building. And so their first question almost was, what's the story there and what's the long-term plan? And we frankly didn't have a great answer for it. It's independently owned, but I think what you will see, and you're seeing it rapidly transpire in the East Village, you've got uses that do not conform to what the neighborhood currently is becoming. So there's a combination of industrial uses, there's vestiges of other planning ideas, and so you're going to see some conflict and you're going to see some changes, and then ultimately the land price will start to provide those incongruous users a chance to cash out and go somewhere else. So it's an economic cycle you get to watch.
All right, more questions from the audience. Yeah, Eric, right down up front. Why don't you go ahead and, oh, there's Eric.
Thanks. So you can imagine it's housing and workforce question. So as we look towards this amazing growth that we're going to see, and look at the kind of folks that and households that are going to be moving in, it's kind of apparent that the affordability problem is going to start to creep up. We've talked a lot about, over the last several years, about the affordability problem that our service workforce has. But it looks like about half of the new arrivals in Des Moines over the next 20 years, the households are going to make less than $50,000. That's going to mean a net that the new construction that's going to be occurring here to house those families in the next 20 years is going to have to be affordable to that demographic. How are we going to meet that challenge?
Kris, what do you think with the affordable housing background that gets to be you? So.
See, this is what happened. My husband's a CPA, which means we did spring break last week, which means I missed this panel, the little pre-meeting. Never missed that because the only email I got was, any affordable housing questions, you get a handout. Okay. This is not a new conversation, but it's a conversation that we all need to have, and it's of course exciting that it's during Affordable Housing Week, and we got a chance to have a heightened conversation, and I had several just walking in today. This is not news, but it is going to become news to you. It will impact every single person in this room. And most of you don't realize, but those people work for y'all. You need to understand where they live. What does it cost? How much is that? What's that percentage? And my favorite story, and I'll try to stay off my soapbox. You can kick me off in a minute. But think about where y'all did today. Where have you come from? Because I'll guarantee you, you gave probably your most prized possession to one of those people this morning. Well, where does she live? And if your daycare bill goes up, you're going to be ticked. Or if you have to sit in line at Starbucks longer, you're going to be mad. Well, guess what? The reason you're in the Starbucks line longer is because one of their employees had a life event, probably a car tire, which means they can't be at work today. Well, if they're closer to work or we do transportation better, they can get there. But we want more of those kind of things. We want all of this kind of vibrant stuff that's going on, but we have to ask where those folks live. And that needs to be a question, and as we grow that, and we want employment growth, and we want job growth, which means we want population growth, and it's coming, God bless us, we're doing a great job. But, Eric gives you a very beautiful statistic. Understand who those people are, and what they're coming for, and where are they going to live. Yes, we've done great apartments. I'm super proud of what all of us have done up here. But, if you want the exact number of how many of those are affordable, Eric can give it to you. But it's tiny, and going away daily. So I think it's a conversation we need to have collaboratively. We need to be in partnership. We need to be thoughtful, creative. And, as Angela alluded to early on, a lot of us in this room are going on a partnership trip in a few works. You have to have that conversation with everybody you talk to. It's going to be state, it's going to be city, it's going to be federal. And you know what, private folks? It's coming at us too. Because if we don't come to the table and be part of that partnership, we're the ones that will be impacted. Because, again, we have to be able to hire, and everybody's HR department right now is screaming for folks. We need bodies. We're stealing from each other today. So we need population growth. We need to continue to do that, but this needs to become at the forefront of this conversation for all of us. But we need to have it collaboratively, thoughtfully, and respectfully to each other, because we can address this as we do. We do partnerships beautifully in this community. That's one of the things we do well, and this needs to be one more thing that we address collaboratively.
Kris, because we moved to Des Moines 6 years ago from Maplewood, New Jersey, which is about 16 miles outside Manhattan, and it was such a 180 in our lifestyle in terms of logistics. I used to, I have a daughter who was in private school in New Jersey, and I would drive 25 minutes to drop her off and then 25 minutes back, and then I'd catch a train into the city, and then I'd take the subway, and it was like an hour and 15 on the other end. So, sometimes my commute would be 3 hours each way. And so I started to do some research after I came to Des Moines because I thought, oh my gosh, this is like a warm bath living here. Why are the public pools so clean? All these questions. I would come to work and they would say, what are the public pools like in New Jersey? But Des Moines is so far ahead on so many measures of quality of life. I would love to see the real estate community get behind the affordable housing crisis because it is a crisis across the country. It's the reason superstar cities, there has been no new residential construction for 20 years in superstar cities like San Francisco and New York and DC and LA. And what you see is millennials moving to San Francisco and living on boats and living in shipping containers. I have a story of a guy who built a box that was 8 feet by 4 feet in his friend's apartment and paid $400 a month for it. So, and these are educated millennials who are going out to take these tech jobs. Well, those companies are recognizing there's no housing for their stars. So then they started moving to Denver, and then they started moving to Austin, and now they're starting to move to Kansas City and Des Moines and the Midwest. So it would be awesome to see the city get ahead of this affordable housing issue because it is a crisis. You look at San Francisco, and you have Google and Apple running shuttles from Oakland for their employees, and the shuttle buses are being attacked by protesters throwing rocks at them. I mean, it's kind of a dystopian housing situation in places like California. I worked a little bit on the Proposition 10 project for the real estate industry because there was such a massive push for rent control. It was very close. And, at every statistic you look at, 98% of economists say rent control is a terrible idea, not only for real estate owners, but for affordable housing because if you don't know, and the Proposition 10 would have allowed all 470 plus districts, cities, towns in California to institute their own form of rent control. So imagine a developer goes into California. Are you going to build anything if you have no idea what rents you can charge city by city? So anyway, when you look at other parts of the country, what's happening with affordable housing is shocking. It's shocking. And it's not only your service folks who can't afford housing, it's your professionals who can't afford housing because they're coming out of school with college debt and nothing new has been built. So anyway, I'm a big proponent of affordable housing, having seen what's happened in superstar cities across the country.
Question right over here.
So what's old is always new again. Airbnb, WeWork, whatever you want to call it, it's experience-based short-term rentals. What we're seeing now is landlords fighting back against that. We're seeing a lot of landlords doing their own WeWork kind of versions and the pop-up retail, whatever it may be. Do you think owners can get ahead of this trend, take back control, or are we already too far behind?
I think owners ultimately have the control to get to decide what they do with their real estate. I think the key is to figure out how to learn from the expectations of the consumer and figure out how to create that or modify what you currently have in place to meet the current trend. I think the term agile real estate has been talked about a lot today. I think this is a great example of where landlords have got to be progressive and figure out how to best position their asset.
Niki, you said something interesting the other day about come and go, not just being in the gas business, but in make sure I get this right, but in the convenience business. Am I saying that right? And can you talk a little bit about what that might mean, especially in that context where you have this real estate in really prime locations all over the city that's traditionally been a gas business, but also, of course, have the convenience store and what that might mean for the future with e-commerce and some of the ways that you might be able to position the company?
Sure, we think of our business as we're in the immediate consumption business. So 80% of our products are consumed within an hour of purchase. And that's something that's hard to compete with when you look at Amazon and delivery to have that consumption right where you want it. And so one of the things that we've talked about as we look to push digital more in e-commerce and the ability to order products online and so forth is that you know, as we're competing with everyone, really, I mean, if you're competing with Walmart or the drugstores or the QSR down the street, is that we have 400 locations that are pretty well positioned throughout the city, where, you know, someone like Walmart may have a few locations. And so just to be able to fulfill those orders it's much easier, more agile within a small box, a small retailer such as ourselves throughout the city, and having those versus if you have one large distribution center. It becomes harder to fill that immediate consumption need. And so we're testing a lot of things to be able to continue to compete in that space, but we also think we have an advantage with our locations and how they're, you know, they could almost in the future become little mini distribution centers, you know, located throughout the cities that we're in.
More questions? Yes, all the way in the back there. I'm just trying to make it difficult for Jason to get over there.
Thank you. We hear about all this growth in Des Moines, and I'm just curious of what's bringing everybody to Des Moines. Have they not been here in January?
Laura, what have you found from the outside perspective? You said warm bath. I don't know about the warm bath.
I meant to say ice bath.
Yeah.
I think it's affordability, affordable housing. I mean, I'll give you a brief example. We bought our house in Maplewood, New Jersey, 16 miles outside Manhattan, right after they put in a direct train line. Now that direct train line is always late because the tunnels under the Hudson are crumbling after Hurricane Sandy. But we bought our house for just under $400 and sold it less than 10 years later for $600. A couple of Brooklyn hipsters bought it and, you know, did some minor fix-ups and sold it a year later for $750. So the price of that house doubled in 12 years. So I think affordability is the number one thing. The other thing is I spoke to a demographer who was here in town who did a presentation. And what he found is the fastest growing demographic in Des Moines are people from 30 to 45 making more than $100,000 a year. And his explanation was that it's being driven primarily by professional women, which was my story. I was a vice president at Meredith Corporation. I had 3 children. And in order for me to be able to balance all that, I needed to be 5 minutes away from their schools and 5 minutes away from my home. So I think he said that it's professional women who either from Iowa or have a tie to Iowa, and they moved away, went to a superstar city, and decided at a certain point that in order to balance everything, they would come back to Iowa. So that's one of the big demos we're seeing.
James Chung, or was it James Chung?
It was James Chung.
Jim Chung, yeah. He did a presentation. I think we've got the video on our website as well, but really interesting look at some of those population trends of what we're going to be seeing, and that's actually going to be part of one of our upcoming events that we've got coming up, taking a look at what those trends look like. More questions? Yeah, great.
Thank you. I attended the Tomorrow Plan speaker series on Monday that Business Record also hosted. It was about transit and how that's going to affect economies. Niki, you mentioned this a little bit on how much your employees are out, so you're able to get more underground parking passes. So my question is, what does the technology of transit do, both in millennials and seniors not having as many cars as maybe they used to, that it can even be cheaper to Uber or Lyft to and from work than it is to own that car? So both on the city perspective of planning for the future, and I know that Des Moines Market District is looking at maximum parking levels. Many of the suburbs have minimum parking levels, whether it's multifamily, commercial, restaurant, et cetera. How does that affect commercial real estate? How does that affect your employees on their transit and participation?
I think from Come and Go's perspective, it certainly helps our employees be able to get to work easier. Now, we're obviously in the fuel business, and so there could be some other impacts there. But, you know, when we look at fuel, I think it's no secret that it's a stagnant, you know, fuel sales are stagnant to slightly increasing. And so we have to look at what replaces that in the future. And we're testing different things like electric vehicle charging and installing that where it makes sense. And then also, it also can change our real estate strategy as well. We have a heavy presence in Colorado, and so Denver has a light rail system. And so we look for locations that are based around the light rail system because people are still commuting and they're parking there. And so it's a way that they still need their convenience items, that we can still service that population. But it just changes the way that we go about our site selection and so forth as we're doing that.
I think you start to see people change their habits when the price of something goes up dramatically. So, $4 gas, for example, will get people to change their habits. I serve on the Des Moines Airport Authority, and our parking at the airport is among the most expensive in the city, and so we start to see people change their habits when they travel to the airport, and the influence of Uber and Lyft is allowing us to, we're checking the data on how many parking spaces we actually need per person who's going through the airport. And I think that correlates to what you see primarily in urban development, where you have got the access to walkability and transit. We're able to reduce, i.e. the market district and parking maximums. You're able to have much more real estate that's actually economically viable. Parking never makes money unless you've owned a lot in Manhattan for 100 years or something. And so you're able to densify a space because of the ability to reduce the amount of parking required.
Go ahead.
I think autonomous cars has one of the potential to be one of the biggest disruptive factors in commercial real estate. There's a few things I thought we're looking at when we design buildings that we look into for the future, because these buildings are going to last for a long time. So looking at things like drop-off lanes for ride sharing. So it's one thing to have 5 or 6 people get dropped off in the morning. That's pretty easy. But what if you get to a point where you have 50 or 60 people at 7:30 to 8 a.m. getting dropped off at a building? Do we need to design in drop-off lanes? Even down to package delivery systems. If we get autonomous vehicles, drone delivery, or just as more and more consumers buy things and get it delivered on Amazon. I remember being in New York, and there was this bellhop with about 50 Amazon boxes sitting at his feet, and just thinking, how do you get these to the people in the building? So how do we look at those package delivery systems? And I've even seen parking ramps with 0 incline. So they're designed to be flat, and then ramps on either end that can come out. So ultimately those parking ramps can be shifted back towards apartments or office buildings, because they're just not a long-term, they just don't see them having a lot of long-term value. So I think it's got a lot of potential to disrupt what we're doing for real estate.
Well, we're just about out of time today, and before we finish, though, I want to give the panel an opportunity to give a closing thought, and what I'd really like you to do is try to push us out about 5 years, kind of look in your crystal ball a little bit. Maybe we'll give you the latitude to be wrong here, but try to predict a little bit about maybe one thing that we might expect to happen in 5 years. I'm going to give you a minute to think of that. I do want to share a couple of events that we do have coming up. I alluded to our next event. It's on May 15th, our second Power Breakfast of the year. It's titled The Talent War 2, and we're taking a look. It's kind of a reprise on something we did about 6 years ago, right before unemployment started dropping pretty dramatically. And with unemployment barely above 2%, we're going to be discussing how your business can recruit and retain and prepare for the future employment, with a specific focus, trying to take a look at some of the pressures that are going to continue to make it even tougher for employers to find really good talent. You can sign up at businessrecord.com/events for that. And although we unveiled the annual real estate magazine today, we're hard at work putting the final touches on our Innovation Iowa magazine. We're going to be unveiling that on May 30th at Corteva AgriScience, division of Dow and DuPont in Johnston. The event is free, but RSVP is required. They've got limitations on the amount of space there. You can sign up at innovationia.com. All right, so final question. Jake, we tried to let you start last time, so we'll go ahead and let you start this time.
I guess my prediction for 5 years from now is that we will have a much stronger offering in housing for sale in downtown. I think there's been a lot of housing that has been delivered, but very limited on the senior end. So as I talked about before, I think that you're going to see both for sale and co-op type availabilities in downtown.
Niki?
My prediction is the continuation of delivery and being able to meet customers with whatever they want, whenever they want it, whether that's having your fuel delivered to your car at work or whatever product that might be.
Adam.
Thanks. I'm the token millennial, I think, up here, so I'll throw something out. I think, as I talk to my peers, I think the one thing they're looking for is authenticity, and that comes in all kinds of ways. We've seen it in brands, and I think as we see it in office space and office development, it's finding space that meets your brand and your values. Our space might not look like REI or may not look like Apple, but we're picking some of those elements and putting it into those. So I think as folks are looking at their office space and buildings, how do you make it authentic to your brand and your values and incorporate that? And ultimately, it's going to help you win the war on talent to get more of those millennials who are seeking that.
Okay, my prediction is around digital transformation. I think in 5 years you'll have an avalanche of data about customers, and you'll see retail centers evolving into values centers. You'll know, for example, that 30% of the people in a given geography are vegans, and maybe a center will pop up that has community space for speeches and a vegan gourmet food shop and a clothing store that's, animal free. So the data will drive the information about the customer, which will drive the real estate.
Kris?
I think what you're going to see in 5 years, and we see it right now, we have a decrease in population, and so you see, the movement between communities, the need for workforce housing, and I think those communities that understand this is a collaborative approach, that we all have to work together to drive that kind of population growth, because the workforce issue, the need for more workforce is not going away, and so I think what you'll see is winners and losers. And as you collaborate and work together to create those vibrant communities, to have those kind of offerings, those will be the ones that'll move forward, and those that don't understand that build it and they will come as kind of over will be the losers.
All right, thank you all for your insight. That wraps up our discussion. But before we leave today, there's one final thing I'd like to do today. Normally this is where I tell you about how our team is going to go back and work on putting together our commercial real estate newsletter, and that Kent Dar is going to be taking care of that and providing all the takeaways for you. I'm not sure if that's going to happen. In fact, he just put in for PTO tomorrow morning, this morning. He's counting down the days. He's got 22 left now. If you read in Commercial Real Estate Weekly yesterday, we announced and he announced that he's going to be retiring on May 24th. And he's going to hate this, Kent, but can you come on up to today? I know you're really going to hate this. Hard and long to find the one photo here where he's actually smiling. He smiles all the time, but you can never grab the photo of him. So, for those, obviously you saw the warm reception, of course, but for the last 11 years, Kent has chronicled the booming development here, and of course, you all have kept him plenty busy over that time. He's broken some of the biggest stories, provided analysis of some of the toughest stories, and he always works really hard to be fair and, of course, accurate. Not only that, he develops really great relationships, and he's done that, of course, over those years. On a personal note, Kent welcomed me in when I returned as a young editor in 2011. As a senior staff writer, he could have very easily given me the rookie treatment, and he definitely didn't. I asked him to help teach me a little bit about commercial real estate, and he did, and we're all better for it. The entire team, we get to listen to him on the phone and working the phones every day. That's one of our favorite things to do, is watch him do that, and we're going to miss that for sure. We're going to miss working with him on stories. So Ken, thank you for all you've done for me, the business record, and the community. I know you hate this, but you deserve to know how much all your hard work has been appreciated. Can we give him one more big round of applause? On a happy note too, we're going to be sad to see Kent go, but in true Kent fashion, he gave us plenty of time and leeway to know that this was coming, which gave us a good runway to go out and find a really good, high-quality reporter to replace Kent with. As a result, we've hired Kathy Bolton. Kathy, can you stand and give a quick wave to everybody? Kathy's exceptionally experienced and a talented reporter. She joins us after almost 40 years working as a reporter at the Des Moines Register. Her first day is going to be on Monday, so we're not going to have any lapse in coverage, so I have no doubt. She's already been out on some of the Affordable Housing Week stuff, so I know she's ready to go. Kathy's covered anything and everything in her career, both as a reporter and an editor during that time. She's covered education, she covered real estate and business, and worked on the business desk there. She's made a career out of writing the types of in-depth stories that truly make a difference in the community. So we're excited to have her on staff. Kathy went to East High as a Drake University grad and currently lives in Pleasant Hill. She loves to bike, is a Cubs fan, which is pretty much the only reason I hired her. And she's looking forward to covering in many ways real estate's impact in the community. I'm excited to have you meet her, and she's ready to meet you as well. I know she's going to bring the same type of sophisticated coverage and be able to bring a lot of what Kent was able to bring to the table. Kathy is going to be available. She'll be up here at the front if you want to introduce yourself. We got her business cards fresh off the press this morning, so those are ready to go. And she'll be happy to start connecting with you. You can reach her at kathybolton@bpcdm.com. And of course, Kent can help make any transitions as we go through the next month. Thank you again for coming. Again, I'm Kris, the publisher of the Business Record. If you ever need anything, or if we can ever be of any help, it's our job to try to help you do business best. And can I get a big round of applause for our sponsors and, of course, for our very talented